Dr. Shyam Maharaj, the Sri Satya Sai Global Council Trinidad and Tobago lovingly welcomes you to the series Awake, Unite and Inspire. We are very happy, fortunate and blessed to have you as our guest on this evening's program. So Dr. Maharaj, share with us, how did you first come into contact with our beloved Mother Sai?
Sairam, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and to share my story as far as my journey with Swami. Um, my journey was really strange in its origin. I was a little boy attending the Tunapuna Hindu school. And every Friday, I believe, we used to have to go to the art center, which was located across the Eastern Main Road behind the Tunapuna Library. And walking there, all of a sudden, there was this picture. It was more of a sketch of a bust from here up of this individual, as you see in the background there, with that big afro here in a framed picture. And I had no idea who this person was because I've never seen a picture of Swami before. Figuring this was something strange, thinking about it slightly, I guess, and just passing it off as nothing. It was not until my family, my uncle and they decided to have a 5-night yajna hosted by Sujratan Rambachan and his group, and a young Pandit Munilal Maharaj officiating the prayers. That when I went, the picture at the foot of the Singhasan was a full-size picture of Swami. And that's when I said, that's the figure that I saw in my eyes when I was going to school. So not saying anything, I stayed quiet and I listened to all of the lectures and everything else. And that's when Swami's persona basically took hold of me. And listening, and I grew that yearning to learn more. And that's when I think I first accepted Swami into my life. And that's how Swami actually brought himself or introduced himself in a very sly way, I would say, to my life. And since then, there has been no turning back at all. All I've been doing now is just learning and learning and learning more and more. And the more I learn, the closer I become to Swami. Sairam.
Thank you very much, Brother Sham. So you are the tender age of 8 or 9 years old.
Yes.
So
Yes.
at that age, were you able to appreciate who you were looking at, the magnitude of the personality?
I would say not quite. I would say that I have a very curious mind from a very young age. And I would say that curiosity is what really stimulated me to learn more about Swami. Sairam.
And you've had a very divine blessing of having come into contact with him at a very tender age. And that has spanned over a 50-year period, which is really amazing and inspiring. And I know you would have had some really wonderful experiences with Mother Sai. Can you share at least 2 of your most memorable ones with us?
Okay. Brahma, I just mentioned that I have this really curious mind. So in the journey of learning who Swami is, I one day decided I'm going to challenge this person. And I'm going to really challenge him to the point that he has to prove himself. So I remember lying on my bed with my on my back with my palms open like this. And I said to Swami, I said, Baba, if you are who you are, or who you say you are, I want Vibhuti right here in my hand, manifested there in my hand. And while waiting, I think I must have fallen asleep. And Swami did a very funny thing. He manifested that Vibhuti not once, but twice. The first time it was, I would describe it as being a little bit coarse. And with that, it was a nice heaping mound in my hand. And with that, he said to me, get up, go give it to your parents and your sister. So during that slumber, I got off my bed. I saw my body get up from that, go give my mom and my dad the vibhuti and my sister. And he mandated that I come back and to where I was. So I went back and I lay down. So during that time, now a second set manifested. That set, he said, it was more the consistency of vibhuti that we know today. And that set, he said to me to keep for myself. Well, sometime shortly after that, I woke up. And I felt that the sensation right in here that something was there. So I said to myself, that's where the vibhuti manifested. So curiosity again, I took my hand and I brought it up to my nose. Guess what? The sweet, flowery smell of vibhuti was there. And that's when I said, okay, I issued a challenge and you took me up on it and you proved who you are. So from then I said to myself, I know now that you are God in my eyes. The second story, or the second experience actually, sorry, was when I was to take Janeo. Now, Janeo, for those who don't understand or don't know what it is, it's the sacred, when it's a ceremony where you take a Brahmin in the Hindu religion, takes that, they do a ceremony and they put that sacred thread around your shoulders. So I was to do that, and my mama and they had done a double whammy, if you will. I was to do the puja for the Janeo, and then piggybacked on that was a christening ceremony for both my sister and I to take on a guru. Well, I had already accepted Swami as my guru from the time of that dream that I had, and he proved himself. And I protested silently, but being a good little boy and not wanting to go against my parents, I said, okay, fine, I'm going to go along with it. But Swami must have heard my protest, because the night before that actual ceremony was to take place, Swami came. He sat at the altar with me and he proceeded to do the guru ceremony and actually the Janeo as well. And there was a funny thing that he did at the end of it. Now, prior to knowing Swami, my favorite personification of God was Lord Krishna. Everybody knows Krishna had a little bit of a wicked streak to him. What Swami did really, really stunned me, because in that dream, what he did is, everybody knows the Johnson & Johnson baby powder, big white container. Well, he took a big container like that, and his hands, I don't know how he did it, but both his hands were filled with the powder. And he proceeded without warning to just put it all over my face. And he sat back with the most beautiful smile I've ever seen, ever in my life. And he was laughing incessantly. And I'm looking at him, it's like, what did you do that for? But the funny thing about it is the smell of that was not of the Johnson & Johnson baby powder. It was that of vibhuti. So he basically smeared my face like a little wicked boy all over and sat back and just laughed. And again, that made me so comfortable that I actually sat without protest now to do the ceremony the next day, knowing fully well that Swami had fulfilled my desire to install him as my guru and my master as far as my spiritual journey is concerned. Sairam.
Thank you very much, Brother Sham, for sharing that very, very intriguing and interesting experience.
Mhm.
I know that in one of our trips to Puttaparthi in the early 80s, that group had involved your mom,
Mhm.
your mother, going on that trip.
Mhm.
I believe she did go back one or two times. So, share with us the impact that your mother, especially, would have had on you in terms of your belief and practicing the teachings of Swami.
Oh my. Mom is the forever follower of Swami. I would say from the time she got to know him to even now, Mom is a firm believer in Swami's teachings, and she's actually installed that within my sister and I to a great extent. And I would say she has had a very large impact in our journey towards learning who Swami is and what he's about. Aside from the fact that, the stories that I just gave you and how Swami introduced himself, my mom had been incessant. As a matter of fact, uh, she actually did a subscription of the Sanatana Sarati, and I used to read that back home because she got it home. And when I came to the US, she would send me copies until the fact that she said, you know what? No, I'm going to get you a subscription for yourself. So my mother continued, even though, because in those days, I don't think I could have found anything on Swami. The only things I had were the books and the Sanatan Sarati that I brought from home and the ones that she sent. And then ultimately the subscription that she had started in my name. So mom had been a very great instiller of Swami's impact in my life as well. Sairam.
So, Brother Sham, can you share one or two specific examples of that impact? What did she and how did she impact you in terms of understanding and practicing Swami's teachings, especially as you were a young adult growing up?
Um, Mom is a retired school teacher, and forever she is teaching. And her instilling, her pushing us really in as a young age, at a young age, to really learn and follow the teachings of Swami. And she would tell us, sometimes when we're kids, so we're gonna be a little bit naughty sometimes, right? So let's face facts. I was a little bit rambunctious little boy, and I'll admit to that. And there's certain things that she would say to us, it's in Swami's name, that he would not be really happy with some of the things that we would do. And they brought us up in the, and I say they, my dad, who's not so much of a Sai follower, but he was very much a religious person because his father was also had also built a temple and stuff like that. So my dad grew up learning and reading the Ramayana and stuff like that. And he has been to India. He had been to India actually. He's gone now 19 years. In October this year would make it 19. But my mom was the one who is forever, I would say, bhakti yogi, whereas I'm more the karma yogi. So, combination of both is where I think my mother's guidance to bring that uh, the worship aspect of it into my persona, being the one who is actually a doer rather than somebody that sits and quietly and says a prayer. I think she has made me a better karma yogi in terms of even in my career and my education and my career here in the United States, and has made me who I am today. Sairam.
Sairam, thank you very much for sharing, brother, because I know Swami places a lot of emphasis on devotion to parents
Mhm.
and especially the mother. So, How has, and you've been exposed to Swami, as we said earlier, at a very tender age, how has practicing the teachings of Sai Baba, internalizing them, transformed and continued to impact your life over the years?
Um, the answer is this. You know, like I just said, I was a naughty little boy. I was a little rambunctious and whatever, and I did have an ego. I'm not going to hide that. I did have an ego at a tender young age. And one of the things through Swami, I really learned that nothing happens without his will. And nothing that I do is me doing it. You know, Swami is the one who's guiding me. And he has been ever since he came to me, and he continues today now, even in my career. Like I always say, I incorporate his teachings in today because I'm in the medical field. We have situations where there are not so nice dealings, if you will. And because of my exposure and my transformation through Mother Sai, that I've learned to deal with these things not in an aggressive way, but in a more calm way. I've learned to listen a little bit more, you know, look, listen, and learn. Those are the three things that I've learned to really, really incorporate into my life. Because I've had to tame the ego way down and realize that, you know, I don't know anything, you know, and what I know, I still don't know, because everything is through Swami's will. So I am just that instrument. Whatever I do, whatever I know is through him and him alone. Sairam.
Thank you very much for sharing, Brother Sham. Can you share some specific examples of that transformation? You know, sometimes you have devotees who are pre-Sai, who lived a particular life, and as they came into contact with Sai, some of them had a bad habit of smoking or drinking or being too worldly. Can you be a little bit more specific in sharing how that transforming effect affected your behavior, your outlook in specific ways?
Okay, coming to the United States was a big culture shock, really big culture shock. Coming from Trinidad, you know how the Trinidad society is. And coming to the United States, there's an undercurrent, I would say, of, I don't like using the word racism, but segregation, let me put it this way. And the undercurrent of that was really shocking to me. And, you know, I had the habit of saying good morning when I passed somebody in the morning time. And I remember while I was here going to school, I would say good morning to some of these people and they'll look around. It's like, is he talking to me? You know, and now that really shocked me. And even now, talking to some patients about, especially patients who have lung issues or on oxygen and stuff like that, with the smoking aspect, and talking to them about the impact of it and what's happening with their lungs and everything else. And talking to them from a level that they understand, not using the technical terms, coming down to the level which Swami has blessed me with the ability of doing. Because I was one of those nerds, if you will. And I loved using the technical terms because they did make me sound so smart. Well, I've learned to tame that down and be more human in my approach and how I explain things to either family members or to patients as well. So the answer to that question is that it basically just tamed me down to the point that I'm able to articulate and explain things to people that they can understand. Now, one of the experiences I've had, I have a very good friend who's a rabbi. If people don't know, a rabbi is a Jewish priest. And he and I have philosophical discussions. And I've learned, and one of the things that I've learned is through my research from back home in Trinidad to here, because I went to the mosque, I went to the church, and my curiosity was there. And one of the things that I actually learned is that we're all basically believing the same. The underlying factor of all is the same. So therefore, if I go and I criticize you, I criticize myself. And this is one of the things that Rabbi and I always had a discussion with. And I explained to him why. I actually went to one of their sessions, the Kabbalah session, which is their mysticism. And I they gave us a pen and a piece of paper to take notes. And when the guy started speaking, I drew a line down the middle. I said Hindu mysticism and Jewish Kabbalah. And everything that he said resonated something that I learned as far as the philosophy that I learned as a Hindu little boy. So from then, it really, really intrigued me, and I looked upon it. And I have a discussion with the unit manager at the facility who is Muslim, and he and I have discussions as well. And again, it showed me the universality of all of the religions. And it told me that we're all one. So we really and truly need to be united, regardless of where we come from and our background. So that's one of the things, in the true answer to your question. I know I went around a little bit, but that's the true answer to the question that you just asked, Shyam.
Thank you very much for sharing, because that universal aspect is what drew a lot of people to initially. Here was a divine master not saying that my way is the only way. Here was a divine master saying, if you're a Muslim, be a good Muslim. If you're a Christian, be a good Christian. If you're a Hindu, be a good Hindu. So it was all inclusive, and you didn't have to change or convert to his way, because his way basically is practical spirituality as to how you understand it based on your upbringing and your religious belief. So that
Yeah.
fostered what you already believed in to make you a better of that. And I think that is what drew a lot of people into the Sai fold, the universality of his message.
Not
So,
only that,
yeah.
but the love that he showed, universal love that he showed, regardless of your background, is the message that I usually would mention when I talk to these guys. I said, basically, he like you said, be a good Jew, be a good Muslim, be a good whatever you are. Swami says that continue your worship as you have, but be a good one at it and be true to it. Sarah.
So, Brother Sham, what has come to me to share with you is being exposed to Swami's birth, his mission, his miracles, his teachings over the years. Have there been specific teachings that have resonated with you over the years? There are many people who say, well, I love that saying, hands that help are holier than lips that pray, or love all, serve all. What are some of the teachings of Swami that have resonated with you and influenced your behavior in terms of transformation?
Like I said, I'm the forever karmic yogi. The hands that serve are holier than the hands that pray. These are some of the things that I actually take to heart. My mother had a hard time understanding why I do what I do. I'm not sure she fully understands. Even today, God bless her. I mean, I love her to death, but I don't think she understands why I do sometimes what I do. And, Swami, love all, serve all. These are two of the things that I actually take to heart. It's instilled on his samadhi, love all, serve all. And that's what I do. That's what I try to do, actually, more accurately. I may fail from time to time, but that love all, serve all, and the hands that serve, really service, service, service. That's the message that actually really, really, truly stood out to me. So that's where my life is being shaped by Swami's teachings. Sairam.
So, Brother Sham, share with us, when you say that Swami says love all, serve all, or hands that help are holier than lips that pray, let's take the love all, serve all. How do you, as a sincere spiritual aspirant, how do you put that into practice when somebody comes to you or you in through a daily interaction?
Okay. I'm in the medical field. I deal with people from all walks of life. And there are instances when they're receptive to what you say, and there are instances where they're not. And some are really, really aggressive, let's put it this way, in their responses. And I've learned that through my experience and through my aspirations, my reaction is totally different than it would have been years ago. I've learned to sit back. You remember those 3 L's that I spoke about? Look, listen, and learn. I do not know the backgrounds of these people. I do not know the experiences of these people. So I look, I listen, and I learn from them. And this is what helps me now to help them. So it helps me to render my services to them in a more acceptable way, if you will, that they will receive what I'm trying to say or do for them, maybe with less protest than they would have been before, or maybe with no protest as a result of what I just said or did or showed them, because my thing is education. I'm going to educate you before I treat you, because I always tell patients, it's your body. You have a right to know why I'm doing something for you. You're the ultimate receiver of what I'm trying to help you with, okay? So you have the right to question me. Question me all you want. I do not mind that, because at the end of the day, you have to be accepting of my care in order for it to help you. So that's the way I would answer that question, Sairam.
Thank you very much for sharing. So, having been exposed to Swami's teachings for over 50 years, what does Sai Baba mean to you today?
Ma, forgive me. I would say this, Swami is my ultimate parent. He's given me worldly parents who I was born to, but ultimately Swami is my mother, my father. He is my everlasting. He's my guru. He's my master. He's my boss. People remember the TV series Highway to Heaven. Michael Landon, who was the angel on earth, referred to God as his boss. Well, that's who Swami is to me. And that's who Swami continues to be to me, because it's only through him that I can do what I do. It is only through him that I am who I am. With the help of my parents, don't get me wrong, my parents gave me everything that they could in this worldly realm to educate myself and to be who I am. But Swami has given me that education and that learning that I am the character that I am, even with the help of my worldly parents, because they did a lot to mold my character. But Swami's teaching has pushed that extra level forward. So Swami is my everything aside from my parents, who I love dearly and I respect dearly. But Swami is my ultimate master, Sairam.
Sairam. And it reminds me that this Sai mother has also said that our first requisite as a spiritual aspirant is to have devotion to your physical parents, because they were the ones who brought you into the world. They are your first gurus, your first teachers, your first exemplars. And Swami himself has demonstrated that in his life with his devotion and service to his own mother, Ishwaramma, by fulfilling all her wishes. So thank you very much for sharing. So, Brother Sham, let's go back to April 2011 when Swami transitioned from the physical into the omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent consciousness. How did that affect you as a Sai devotee, and how have you been able to navigate now from the form into the formless?
I was really angry um, because I was requesting, and I'm putting that very mildly, to Swami that I come to Putarpati and see him. And he never gave me the opportunity. So I was really angry that he left without giving me that opportunity. And the night that he took Samadhi, I remember going to sleep. Here's another story for you. Swami knew how angry I was. And he, during that night of sleep, came to me. And not only, he did not come to me in the physical form, he came to me in the spiritual form, and he put me right where his Samadhi is. But he didn't put me above ground, he put me below ground. The Samadhi as it is today was not there then, but I saw it. But he put me below ground, and they were singing and chanting, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs. Now, I don't sing. If I sing in the shower, the water stops flowing. That's how bad I am. Swami put me on the ground, right in the middle of the hall, and I was singing at the top of my lungs so that Swami could hear. And I kept singing and singing and singing and asking him to come back. I kept asking him to come back. And what happened is, that Samadhi, they put a ladder down into the pit, and Swami crawled out of it. And he showed me that he's forever going to be with me. He answered my call while I was screaming from the bottom of the ground. And it has shown me then that no matter what I do, Swami is with me. I ask him for something and he answers that call. So he sees, hears, and knows everything. I protested silently that night, and he actually heard my protest, and he came and he showed me that don't lose faith. Don't lose faith. I'm still there with you. So that's my response, and that's my answer to that question. I mean, Swami has shown me that even though he's not here physically anymore, he has been, and he will always be with me. Sairam.
Thank you very much for sharing that, brother. Now, Swami has a saying: politics without principles, education without character, business without morality, science without humanity is not only useless but positively dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've been in the medical field, you've been practicing in the US for many, many years. Share with us, has there been occasions in your life where you have been confronted with unethical, irresponsible, fraudulent behavior? And how have you been able to navigate those situations using the human values or the basic teachings of Swami? Have you been tested in situations, and how have you navigated them?
United States is a great place, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of questionable, if I will, situations and questionable people. And people will, for whatever reason, whether they dislike you because of the color of the skin or because they dislike you as far as your aspirations and your gains as far as your education is concerned. A situation arose a long time ago where there was an accusation that came out, and it was unfounded. And I remember walking into the hospital and walking into the department, and Swami kept me probably invisible because nobody saw me. And I walked right past my supervisor's door and the charting room where everybody was sitting and charting. And as I walked into the department, there was a voice on the back of my head saying, get out now. And by the time I got home, nobody saw me, as I said. So by the time I got home, in those days, I only carried a beeper. We didn't have cell phones, so I'm dating myself now. So when I got home, I recognized one of the numbers. So I called and I was told the situation. And of course, it was unfounded and untrue. And the way I dealt with that was this. I went head on. I went back to the hospital and went into my supervisor's office, and I gave my story. And I said, look, this is the situation here. This is what it is. Situation that I'm accused of never happened. And I implore you to go double check this because there were witnesses. And long story short, it was found to be unfounded, and the person who made the accusations eventually had to leave the job because I stood my ground. Now, after 9/11, there was a lot of misconception as to people with my features. And in those days, I had a mustache and a beard. So people kind of would misunderstand who I am. And one of my friends, who actually is gone now, she was a police officer, and she called me and she said, and in those days I was learning to fly. That's a little bit of a background. And in the front of my car, I had a plate says my other cars, and there was a picture of an aircraft. And she said to me, take that down, and whatever you do, go from work to home, because people were calling on neighbors who they were living next to for many, many years and had no problems with. So I said, okay. But then again, I mean, I said to her, it's like, I'm not afraid because I am who I am. If somebody wants to know who I am, they can come ask. You know, I have to be firm to my convictions. And with these type of things, that if you stand your ground and let people know who you are, then these type of situations that you're asking about will not occur, because people, misconceptions are as a result of being uneducated and uninformed as to who you are. So I would say, you know, the situations like that, I confronted them head on. And luckily, I've come out on top with Swami's grace. Sarah.
Thank you very much for sharing, because we know that to navigate and put into practice human values in a society that is not conducive to it could be very challenging at times. A lot of persons who are anchored in that faith and belief in their value system, they have very little difficulty in basically practicing the human values and speaking it out firmly and lovingly. So it's very, very admirable to hear you navigate it with that same intent. So the million dollar,
Could you try again? Sorry, that's my iPad just waking up.
right. The $1 million question that we ask all the guests, that they say is sometimes difficult to answer, against the background of what is happening in the world. And there's so much happening in the world in terms of wars between countries, fights in the families, the pandemic, death, disability, economic depression. There's so much of disrespect in relationships, so many of breakdowns in society. Against what is happening as apparent chaos in the society, if someone were to come to you, Dr. Shyam Maharaj, and said, Doctor, I want to make the world a little bit more loving, a little bit more kind, a little bit more peaceful, what advice or what recommendation or sharing would you give to such a person to fulfill his or her requirement?
Like I said before, I mean, change starts with oneself. If one wants to change society, one has to change oneself. You lead by example. That's a thing that my mother, I'm going to give her credit here for that, always said, lead by example. You know, your character is important. And people know who you are through your character. And I would say the reason why people have conflicts with others is either a misconception. A lot of the times it is my belief, and I could be wrong, but it's my belief that they're not happy with something within themselves. They're missing something within themselves, either spiritually or otherwise. And with that type of grief or anger within them, they look externally to find faults with others. And as a result of that, we have situations like we have now. You know, aside from the pandemic, let's take, for example, that war that we have going on. It's because somebody wants something that they don't have. You know, and the conflicts that we have within the religious realms is because there's a lack of understanding, and there's a misconception. And this is one of the things that Swami's teachings, the universality of love within all is important. And that, I think, is lacking in society. I will draw an example. I always ask people whenever we have these type of religious discussions, how many oceans are there on the planet Earth? And the answer always comes back correct. You know, the 5, and they would proceed to name it. My answer to them is, you're wrong. Because you're looking from the inside out. And if you will, I have a little prop that I have here. If you look, this is the Earth. If you look from the inside out, you see all these different, all you can see is what's in front of your eye. But if you look from out here, what do you see? You see a big blue marble with a couple pieces of dirt in front of them, immersed in the ocean, sorry. So this is what I say to them. I said, okay, this big blue marble is that God factor that we all believe in. The different pieces of dirt that you see immersed in that are the different belief systems of the globe. Whatever you identify with, you're one of those little pieces of dirt. So you're always immersed in that God factor. And if one takes that to heart and realize what I've come to realize, that we're all one in the eyes of the divine, then I think that in itself is what's going to change society on a whole, because then all this jealousy and anger and everything else will start fading away. And it'll help make society the way it should be through Swami's blessings. Sairam.
So, Dr. Sham, one final question. Swami says, I am God, but you are God also. And that we should affirm that I am the infinite supreme, the one reality. I am Satchit Ananda Swarupa. I am Om Tat Sat Om. He's also said that the main fundamental purpose for his incarnation is to awaken the inherent divinity latent in each and every one of us. But that affirmation, I am God, I am not different from God, which I'm sure you would have read and heard before, What does that mean to you today, and how are you processing that in your daily life as one's life's purpose?
Like I mentioned before, I am but the instrument. I am not the doer of the action. I'm the physical doer, but everything that I do is through the will and the grace of Swami. So Hindu philosophy teaches us that we are incarnate, we are part of the divine. Swami has also said that. And that is something that, that spark within us that we call the soul. What is it? It is that spark of the divine. So when the words that we are God as well, Swami says he's God, but we are God also. That's exactly how I would interpret that. We are that little spark that Swami took from himself and put into us. And with that, saying that we're supposed to be and act as though we are the incarnation of God. The only problem is that we don't know it. The only problem is that we don't accept it. The only problem is we forget it. And that's where our problems come from. So Swami saying that we need to take it to heed, and we need to understand it and accept it. And I think coming back to the question that you had before, that in itself is what's going to help us along the journey of making this society a better society. Sairam.
So, Dr. Sham, the Sri Satya Sai Global Council Trinidad and Tobago expresses gratitude and appreciation to you for taking the time to share your personal journey and transformation at the lotus feet of our beloved Mother Sai. Your sharing has been very inspiring, very sincere, honest, and thought provoking. May Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba continue to bless and guide you, and may you continue to be a loving instrument in his divine mission. Jai Sai Ram.
Sairam. And Swami's blessings to all, including yourself, everybody who's listening to this. I hope I have triggered some thought. And guys, on a personal note, thank you very much for doing the series. As you know, I'm an ardent listener, and I do appreciate the fact that you have this program going, which inspires us and educates us as far as Swami's teachings. And I really appreciate, and I ask Swami to bless you with continued strength and effort to put this and continue going forward from today. Jai Sai Ram.
Sai Ram.